There's so many things that, that come to mind. And when I was asked to do this, I was like, Sandy, have you? But then I said, you know what, this is a good thing. I cannot tell you. And the reason why I was apprehensive wasn't because of y'all. It was just because, when you speak in front of groups, and I mean, I do kids and, you MC events, but actually when you're putting yourself out there and you're speaking, typically crazy people tend to show up. And so you had to be very careful, what you say yes to. So you all have been vetted. Y'all don't know it, but y'all have been vetted. But, as you're constantly being approached in this area and in this business, and you're a woman and you're out front, and I don't know if y'all listened to the show this morning, I was talking about Cheryl, I can't even remember her name now, from Lean In. She wrote the book. And basically, talking about women and what we do and how we stand in our own way sometimes, and just her experience. And all these things allow me, when I take these opportunities, they allow me to be all the more enriched. And so just as you all are looking forward to me coming, hopefully, I was looking forward to being in front of you and to hearing from you and answering your questions and meeting with you. And I think I will tell you how I got here. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people say, well, you are doing radio and TV. How the hell did that happen? And we ain't in the sanctuary part of the church, are we? Because I'm saying hell. I want to make sure, I want to get extra credit. But, I was a civil servant. So I worked for Peterson Air Force Base. And and I remember people saying to me, you've got a good voice, and do you sing? And I was like, no, I hum. I don't sing, and I'm like, what's a good voice? Because you can't hear yourself. I mean, you only know you talk. This is the sound you make when you open your mouth. And so long story short, I went and auditioned for this radio show. I happened to be in the Citadel Mall. How many people are familiar with Colorado Springs? Okay, so I lived down there. So I was in the Citadel Mall, and just happened to be wanting to pick something up that day. And they had these big old banners, Magic FM radio tryouts. And I was working for Colonel Kirkpatrick at the time at Air Force Space Command. So I didn't really need another job. But quite frankly, I didn't think that I would get another job. Just like in the book, Lean In, where we talk ourselves out of the opportunity sometimes before someone else tells us no. I almost talked myself out of the opportunity. And I was like, what do you have to lose? You got a gig? Go. You absolutely go. And so please, come on in, ladies. And so I did. I got in this line, and it was about 60 people in this line, and I was not prepared. I was just winging it, like is kind of what we do. I was just winging it. I had on sweatpants. My hair was long at the time. I was in a ponytail, no makeup. I was like, you know what? The worst thing they're going to tell me is no, and I'll leave out of this mall the same way I came in. And 60 people in line, and they were randomly calling people back. And of the 60th person, and they had resumes, they had the portfolio. I didn't have anything. I had, a prayer and a ponytail. And they called me back first. The last person to get in line, they called me back first. And so you had to do this interaction with the on-air guys. FM jocks are really, really, really different from AM jocks or from AM people, because FM, they do crazy stuff. They're just mental. And you got to be able to roll with it, keep your credibility, and, do what you need to do, and then get off the show. Little did I know that job would actually prepare me to work with Dave Logan and Scott Hastings on the Zoo, which is exactly what it was when you are dealing with an ex-NBA and an ex-NFL player. So they are clearly very strong, and you got to be able to make sure that you match wits with them, and at the same time be seamless. So out of the 60 people, they narrow it down to 10 folks. Each person spends a day on the air with the jocks, and people call in, and finally the program director gets the last say. And once again, I had to go first because I was working at Air Force Space Command and going to school at CU 3 nights a week. And we were coming up on spring break, and I was going down to see my mother, and there was no way I was telling my mom I wasn't coming home. So I said, well, I've got to go first because I got my airline tickets. And so when you go first in front of 10 folks, you need to be like on because you want people to remember you. And so, of course, I get offered the job. And so I initially say, well, you know what, I'm ecstatic with the guys, but I go to Douglas Kirkpatrick and I say, you know what, Doug, I said, you've been great to me. You've tutored me through college. He was one of those bosses who was terrific. I'll never, ever forget him. Still, talk with him to this day. He had a PhD in math. I'm like, who does that? But okay. So I think he had only gotten one B in his entire life. In any of his courses. So he numbers. And I said, why do you, the numbers? And he said, because they never change. They are constant. Bless you. See, I even have one of those. And he said, they never change. That's why I love math. And so he tutored me through calculus and all the things. So when I went to him and I said, Douglas, I got this job offer, but I'm not going to take it because, it'll take me away from here. And he said, well, what is it? And I told him about it. And he says, I'm going to change your hours. I'm going to change. And I said, if you've ever worked civil service or for the government, you don't change. They don't reward creativity. This is how we did it in 1950. This is how we're going to do it in 2009. I mean, they do not change. And so I said, well, you can't do that. It was 7:30 to 4:30. You get an hour for lunch. And he said, no. He said, I said, why are you doing this? And he said, you shouldn't be here. He said, you could be my secretary for the next 30 years like the other women who were here, and all of them were women. And he said, you should not be here. He said, you have more to offer and more to give. And he said, and I'm going to help you get there. And I said, well, where am I going? Since there, where is there? And he said, you can't see it. And he says, I don't know exactly where there is. He says, but I just know it's not supposed to be here doing this correspondence and managing this office of officers. You need to be doing more. And so I took the gig, and it was getting up at 3 in the morning, getting to the radio station, Magic FM, by 4. And they were an FM station, and the market size is much smaller in Colorado Springs than it is up here. And so you don't have what they call a news service, like an AP wire service that's sending you in all the stories. So I had to basically just read the papers. But my updates were so short because really it was about interaction with the on-air jocks, to be able to control them like, I had ADHD medication. But they were a handful, but so am I. So I was up for that task. But I would get there and print out the news and all that stuff. And they offered me about 6 months later, they said, well, we're going to have to let you go unless you can do full time. And I said, because I was, still working at Douglas. He had changed my hours. I was into his office at 9, took a 30-minute lunch, and then I was out the door to go to school 3 nights a week by 6. And so that's why when people tell me, it's like, I can't do it. I can't, it's like, how bad do you want it? Do you really want it? And for some reason, there's a breakdown with that determination when it comes to things like potato chips for me, but that's a whole different topic. It's like, how bad do you really want? I can do everything else, but it's like, don't put them chips in front of me. So he says, Douglas moved the hours. And when I told him I couldn't do it, I made my promise. I couldn't transition. I couldn't take that hit at the time financially. And still, at the time, I was married to another individual, and I could not reconcile the two. It's also very important, if I may be so bold, as I'm looking at some of these faces, and y'all know, I'm sure y'all have crossed the bridge that I am attempting to cross, but it is always so important sometimes, as my mother has said to me, sometimes the young can teach the old. When you think about all of the challenges and the obstacles, people say, well, it really doesn't matter who you marry. It so matters who you marry. It matters who you marry. Y'all like, oh my God, it matters. It matters. And so when I recognized that this was not fine guy, wonderful, just was not on the path that I was on. And so it took a lot, but I stepped out and I did what I needed to do. I left. And so all of those things are happening at this time when you've got all this great influx, and how are you going to make it, and what do you do, and have a plan. You know, my plan was to get the hell out that house. That was my plan. I mean, have a plan. And so moving forward and doing those things and transitioning from being on the radio to being back at Air Force Space Command made me think, okay, if I ever get this opportunity again, I want to make sure that I am ready. That I am absolutely ready. So about 6 months later, KOA came into the picture. They wanted me to do weekends on the radio. Now, for those of you, how many people here listen to KOA or know 850 KOA, the news? Okay. KOA is what they call a mothership station. It is the big 50,000 watt blowtorch. And when you hear that, you think, well, what does that mean? What that means is radio signals don't stop unless they stop. In other words, if a mountain or something stops them, they keep going. So we're already up higher. So I've had calls when I worked at KOA from people who were in Greece saying, I can hear you. I live in Colorado, but I can hear you. I can't believe I can hear the blowtorch, because the signal keeps going. And so there was a time when, you know, World War II, where this was every other station had to power down. Like sometimes it's a little hard to even hear AM 760, depending on where you are in the city. Now, that is not my choice, trust me. But it has to do with the signal and how strong that signal is, and all the signals that are around it. But KOA, started working there, did weekends. I'd commute back and forth on weekends and still keep my civil service job. And then I graduated from college and I get a job down in Houston. I didn't want to go to Houston because at the time that was like the murder capital of the United States. And I was like, I'm going through a divorce, I'm single, I don't know anybody in Houston, and I'm going to Houston. Lord, why hast thou forsaken me? I really did not want to go to Houston. But I met some folks who, once again, you know, God knows who to send, honey. I am a believer in the walk, in that, and I don't know if you listen to me say this on the show. People say, oh, you know, I love this preacher and, you know, this church. And I said, well, why do you love him? Well, you know, I mean, he knows this scripture. And I said, well, he's the preacher. He's supposed to know scripture. I'm not impressed. You know, I am not impressed. I think it is more important to be in a position to show people how you are living, not tell them. Now, I understand the pastor's job is to do that, but you got a lot of folks who are, let's just say, y'all want to come in and have a seat? Because, you know, y'all look really sad standing over there by the door. That's right. That's good. I am a big believer in, I know where I've come from. And I may not know totally where I'm going, but I know this is all part of that walk. And so sometimes people on, AM 760, I got in a huge debate with one individual who was like, you know, I can't believe, Gloria, you're on the radio and you're espousing and you're putting out stuff about religion. I can't believe it. You've never seen, you know, God. You don't know. And, you know, and I said, well, you don't know a headache or an orgasm, but you know when you having one. Right? To which he said, no one has ever made it that clear to me before. And that was the end of that conversation. So I say to people, I am not one to try to influence and make people believe. You believe what you want to believe. I just know where I've come from. And I know how difficult it was and how I'm like, I don't know how I got here, but I'm thankful and I'm continuing on that march because the opportunities have truly been phenomenal. And I don't squelch them. People say, well, one guy even this morning said, well, how did you do what you were doing? I mean, how is this happening? And I said, because every opportunity is an opportunity. Nothing is waste. Don't waste anything. I don't care if I'm talking to little school kids. You do not waste any opportunity. I don't care how old you are. If it's something that you want to do, my mother's like, well, you know, Chloe, you think it's too, you know, I'm 75. Do you think it's too late for me to go to school and get my high school diploma? I said, not unless you're breathing. If you're breathing, it's not too late. Go get it. You know, I just think that those things are important. So I spend the time down in Houston, and I moved back up here because of Cleo Parker Robinson dance. How many people are familiar with Cleo? Yeah, she is something else, honey, in a good way, but her dance ensemble is phenomenal. And so I came back to be the development director. One of the reasons why I I thought I was done with the business, or at least Houston. I knew I didn't want to make Houston my home. Houston used to be the murder capital, but even when I was down there, I mean, it's a big deal in Denver. If you've got 2 and 3 murders in a weekend, that's a big deal. The night that I had this epiphany, because I had been in Houston for about 1.5 years, and there were more murders than usual. There were 20 murders in a weekend. And so I called, if you're the person who's there, and so if you believe that there's something more and you've got to call in reinforcements, you're supposed to call the news director first. And so I said, hey, Joe Isbrand. I said, Joe, I think we need to call the on-call reporter because, I've got more than was coming over the police scanner, and I need some assistance. He said, well, okay. He said, well, how many are there? And I said, well, I think we're up to 21, but, we've got some people who are critical. And he says, oh. He said, no, call me back when it's like 25, closer to 30. He said, it's not critical enough. And I said, really, Joe? And he said, yeah, Glo. He said, you know what? I have been in Houston. He was in a Houstonian for most of his life. And he said, there were weekends where it was 40, 45. And I said, I don't want to be that callous. I just don't want to be that callous. I don't want to be, and it was because Joe was a great news director from the standpoint of, he was big on go get the story. You go wherever that story is. Now, in Texas, they have a lot of stories that are hurricanes. I don't do hurricanes. So we had some problems at the hurricanes attorney. He was like, Gloria, I need you to go out. I'm like, you can take it off my pay. I'm not going. It's a tornado, So, all this thing where you see reporters on CNN where they're out there and the wind's blowing them and we're out here. When I said, you are an idiot. I'm not. Y'all know it's a tornado, a hurricane, a flood, whatever it is. Do y'all need us out there saying it's a hurricane? I get it's an action live shot, and maybe you want to set it up before the actual thing gets there. But once the weather event is happening, I'm in the house. So I had to learn some things about my craft and some of the things that I was willing to do and am not willing to do. I have covered KKK meetings, just so you know, I'm not sugar britches up here. I'm not, but when it is an act of God or it's a big storm or something, I respect the elements. I don't need to gurgle water for y'all to get there's a flood. So I understand, and respect the craft. And so he actually reached out to me not too long ago, but I haven't seen him in like 10 years, but it has been a healthy walk. So then I come back here after being down there for 2 years as Cleo's development director. And that worked out for about 1.5 years. And it just through a series of events, my mother, I thought, was going to come and live with us and some other things. And it was a very demanding job. So I moved, and Jerry Bell, who was the news director at KOA, said, hey, you know what? I really would like you to come back. Could you? Because I had kind of been under the radar, since I had been back, because I really thought I was done with the business, that I didn't really particularly like where it was going. Well, at that same time, when he approached me, I had started doing stand-up comedy at Comedy Works, which was a whole different, if you've never been in that world, comics are different anyway. And so, and I understand, we're wired a little differently, but I'm even different in that I don't smoke anything, and I don't do drugs, and I don't drink alcohol, and comics typically don't get started till like 10 o'clock at night. That's great if you don't have a job. That's wonderful. And you have an understanding mate who is like, baby, go do it. And I'm thinking, okay, hello, this is good. But I couldn't do it once I started working mornings, because you're up at 2 a.m. to go and do what you need to do, and you land and you're in the newsroom, whether it's radio or TV. And so I decided basically that I'd put that kind of on hold. But what really has happened is a lot of what happens in the creative mind will show up whether I'm on CBS 4 or whether I'm on AM 760. It's an outlet. And so it's amazing how these things just kind of, just unfold right in front of you. So I began working at KOA, doing the zoo with Dave Logan and Scott Hastings, and did that for almost 8 years. And they are truly a hot mess. They were like an old married couple. They argued and fought like cats and dogs during the commercial break, but don't get in between them. Don't you get in between them. And so that was their walk for many years, and enjoyed that. Absolutely loved the relationship, and still spend some time with those guys to this day. but I knew I wanted more. I knew that some of the things I was hearing on the radio, some of the things that was taking place in politics in this country was very difficult for me to swallow. And so I'm like, well, you know, Glo, your voice is like anybody else's. You ain't that special. Why do you feel like you have this? And that question's still out there. I don't know. But if the opportunity ever presents itself, then I want that opportunity. And so started on CBS 4. And CBS 4 came about because I do a lot of emceeing, you know, different events, different galas. And the news director, as well as the general manager from 4, said, you know, we don't really have a job that we've created, but let's talk about some of the possibilities. And I'm like, okay, I've never done TV. So if you want me, you better be clear that's who you want, because I'm not like the anchor in the chair. I'm just me. I'm just Glo. So they said, no, we want you. And during the DNC, they came to me and they said, we've got DNC's here for 2 weeks. How many people went to the Democratic National Convention? Y'all went. 2 weeks. And they said, we want you to be on the set with the anchors. You do commentary, and it's just a 2-week gig. And then I said, okay, let's be clear. You want commentary. You want me, right? I said, nope, Gloria, we want thumbs up, baby. I said, okay, all right. Thumbs up, baby is my expression, not theirs, by the way. So this was a Monday, because this summer will be 5 years at CBS 4. By Wednesday morning, after we did the morning show, I get a call. And the news director says, hey, you know, I need you in my office. I'm like, oh, this gig is up, sorry. So I'm like, okay, what are we gonna do? So he calls me and he says, hey, listen, we wanna keep you. I said, well, yeah, I still got, you know, a week and a half, you know. And he said, no, we wanna keep you beyond this. And I said, well, what's the job? And he said, you know, we'd like to add you as part of the morning show. And I said, here is my problem. I said, it absolutely cannot be buffoonery. I can't, you know, you've got some folks on TV right now who are just on TV because for TV's sake. They're, you know, reality TV is like, really? Wow. But it's huge right now. And so I was just really big on, if you want people to watch you, you got to give them something to watch. You've got to, you know what you're talking about. Not be an expert on it. I make plenty of mistakes, but know what you're talking about. And so, you know, we came to an agreement and basically saying it will not be about buffoonery. It will have substance. It will be about something. And so that evolved into me going from in the mornings into the afternoon. And they were apprehensive. The one thing about giving your opinion on TV is those people who agree with you love you. And those people who don't, which means they change the channel. Very polarizing. And so so in essence, maybe you could say I did my job too well. They said, we want to make sure that you continue on. And I said, well, you know, what are you getting at? Because at the same time we're having this conversation, inside of myself, I'm thinking, you don't want to be a one-trick pony. You want to be able to do more than one thing. You know, you want to be able to, whether it is a story that you have to cover, a personality piece, or giving your opinion, a commentary, you need to be able to do more than one thing and have the viewer buy that brand to say, you know, I see her in that and in that. And so those things are very important. So I'm always cognizant on what I have on, bless you, what I have on, and how I present myself. I cannot tell you how many women and men, this is very important. Oh my God, you look like us. Not black women, but women who have hips, women who, you know what I mean? I mean, it's important to be able to represent all, small or skinny. But every time you see on TV, people think, you know, are all of them a size 6? Is there something in the contract that says you got to be, you know, a size? I had a friend of mine. How many people here know Bazi Kanani or remember her? Okay. Bazi and I, good friend. She's in Nairobi right now. She's ABC correspondent. And she took over the Nairobi branch. And so about 2 or 3 years out, Bozzy was like, I'm tired and I want to go do some shopping. Can you go shopping with me? And we joke about this all the time now, but at the time I was very serious. And so I said, yeah, I don't typically go shopping with other women because, we just do what we do when we're out, right? So Bozzy says, she says, meet me in Nordstrom. I said, okay, fine. So, I'm kind of perusing, I'm looking through stuff, and so Bozzy comes in and I say, let's look at this. So she's like, yeah. She says, I said, what size do you wear? She said, a 00. I said, you need to eat, child. What is wrong with you? And I said, you mean like a preteen? That's like a size 6 in a child. I said, a 0? Who the hell wears a 0? That's not even a size. You haven't even gotten to the sizes yet. You pre-size. What is wrong? So she just could not stop laughing. And she's like, now she wears a 2. Oh. So I say all that to say, you need to be who you are on TV. And that's why when they brought me in, and they said, this is who we want. No, I haven't been to anchor school. What you get when you watch me is just me. I talk with my hands. This is who I am. And this appeal, and I'm thankful for it, is it has made a lot of people very, very warm to me. Even, I can't tell you the stories, but one in particular comes to mind. There's a guy out in Highlands Ranch. He's like, I'm a Republican. I'm an old white Republican. I said, okay, you've been to the doctor. And so because clearly that's an ailment. I'm joking. And so he says, but I can't help but I can't wait to see what you're going to say, or, I always listen. And I said, that's a wonderful compliment. Thank you. He says, I don't agree with you most of the time, but I always listen and I always watch. And he said, you just seem like a real warm person and somebody that I could break bread with. I said, yeah, but on this end of town. So anyway, so I always think that you're talking to people. You're really, at the end of the day, that's who you're talking to, just folks, people just like me, just like y'all, just folks. And I think bringing that different perspective to the table has been not always warm, but I think overall it's been a very, very good thing. I think not only for the market, but for you all. And so that support, people say, it's how can I support you? I said, or how can I help you? I said, just continue to support me. Those things are important because one person calling in represents about 1,000 people, viewership-wise. And that's on average. I mean, depending on the day part, it's more, but about 1,000 people in this size market. So your voice does matter, and they do listen. When enough people call, if one person calls them, 2 or 3, they're like, oh, we're watching. If it's 10 or 20, something's about to change. I mean, those things, it does matter. So the same thing happened, me going from TV into radio again. When the opportunity for AM 760 came up, and, I went to Tim Whelan, who's the news director, and I said, hey, this opportunity for me to be a host on AM 760 has come up. You've been very supportive up until this point. Is it going in today? And so he said, you know where you're going with that. The two are separate. And I said, absolutely, they are. So I do a different role on TV now. The debate is, and I still have this debate, I just think journalism is changing, has changed in many aspects. You still have those who are in the higher echelons at corporate who see it as a very traditional, you are, this reporter and you don't give your opinion, and I understand part of that, but I also sometimes they dumb down the viewer. They say, well, the viewer doesn't really get that you're a radio host in the morning and a TV person at night. I said, sure they do. You just got to walk them through it, and you got to be transparent. Don't try and slide it by them. I said, it's important to be transparent. But I like my role in that interactive help center, or me doing a personality piece on Quincy Jones or something that's going on in downtown with the mayor or whatever it is. I like having that versatility where I can stretch in the morning and be glow. And even though I write my own script in the evening on CBS 4, unlike most of them, you have producers who are writing it. I get there early enough that I do my own writing and I know the story so that if the teleprompter goes down, and it will, You are not standing there with your necklace in your hand saying, oh, Lord, what do I say now? So you really need to know the material. And it's not a matter of if you'll mess up, it's when, and it's how you recover. So I think that the walk has been extraordinary, and I'm glad to be on it. But at the same time, it is uncharted territory. So I thank y'all. I thank y'all for the support and even wanting to listen, because I recognize, because I can't assume, hello there. Hi, how are you all? Please come in. You cannot assume that everybody is in support of your position or even, you know, what you're thinking. So I thank y'all for even wanting to listen. And I know there are questions. There are always questions. So bring them on, ladies, because the last thing y'all are bashful. I can tell. Yes.
You mentioned a couple times how journalism has changed, and obviously it has. But how do you characterize that? How do you feel it's changed?
I think some of it's for the good and some of it not so much. And I do believe this. I think when you look at entities like, you know, Fox News or MSNBC, you know, it was Fox News that really kind of changed that landscape of really being completely one-sided at first. It was like, well, surely they're not going to say, and yeah, they did. And anytime you got the head guy coming out calling the president lazy, it's kind of telltale, considering you didn't call the other guy lazy. And so then you look at MSNBC, who to some degree has followed suit. But I will say this, they at least are going to present both sides, you know, to have someone on. I think when it gets even dicey on Fox, you have individuals who struggle with that, who don't want to go on. I mean, it's no coincidence for a very long time, candidate Obama, who became President Obama, wouldn't go on Fox News because if you're just sitting there and you are getting questions bombarded at you and they're loaded questions, you know you're not going to get a fair shake and you have no control over what they're going to edit. Why even put yourself through that? So CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, I mean, I look at them all. It's good to be well balanced. As I say on the show, there are many Republicans who listen, many of them, because they come up to me and many more who don't. But they'll say, well, at least you listen. Can we at least have a dialogue? And that's not what we're getting in other places. One of the things I am not crazy about in this profession is some of that. That at the end of the day, if we're all on this big blue marble, at some point we're all gonna have to come to, I mean, this sequestration, really, people, really? You know, y'all know at some point y'all gonna break, but you gotta work it out, because, I mean, what's the alternative? And then you've got all of these external factors like Iran and what's his name going over to North Korea. I'm like, oh my God, get him. You know, please, could you get him? And I understand I've never had the pleasure of meeting Dennis Rodman, but I will say it's probably like birth control. You do not want your child bringing that home. So that'll stop you from even having babies. But I will say he's probably a nice fellow, because I know this is going on tape, and one day I'm gonna run for governor or something. Somebody's gonna be like, she said this about Dennis Rodman. But I do get nervous knowing that he's going back over there and he's going to be vacationing with Kim Jong-un. I'm like, really? Because how's that conversation go? But I'm sure he's a interesting fellow. So anyway, so you've got all these external factors that are playing into all of this. I just believe that the viewer is more sophisticated than a lot of times people are giving you credit for. When I see individuals who are journalists giving their opinions on things in a talk show realm, and then that same journalist may do a piece on an education or talking to, you know, the superintendent or whoever it might be. I think that you are sophisticated enough to split that out. There are those, and it seems those who are more vocal, who will say, no, you know, you have to do this or this. And I don't live in that world, and I don't think you do either. It's a this and that. It's just how you do it. So, yes.
So many things, but how do you think women in the media have come? Because with the documentary Misrepresentation, and then the talks about the Grammys, which I didn't watch, but I guess the host was very degrading. A lot of his jokes were about women.
Oh, God.
And so I'm wondering, you know, I have a daughter and I worry about her future, you know, with body image and media, and I mean, what's your take on it?
I think you have to, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I get people who will come up to me, regardless of their shape, size, color. I'm glad that you're there. You know, if they're saying the average woman is a size 14, you don't see that in magazines. And again, beautiful women are beautiful women, but we have bought into that brand, as you say, that body size. I talk to my niece all the time. I'm like, you are 7. You diet. Girl, you better go eat. You know, what's wrong with you? If I walk into a department store and the mannequin is so skinny, I get hungry, there's a problem. You know, I think we need to make sure that it's about being fit. You heard me this morning, and I've been talking about Orange Theory Fitness. One of the things, if I don't know nothing else, y'all, I know that if you are not healthy, no opportunity waits for you to get healthy. So if you're not trying to work out, Lord knows. And I love, how many people know about Orange Theory Fitness? Y'all don't, oh, that's got to stop. Orange Theory Fitness is his play, and there are 4 of them that are here right now. From what I understand, by this year, time next year, there will be like 7. But there's one at the corner of Parker and Arapahoe, and it really is about personal training, but at really, really, really cheap prices. And what's happening is you're working out on a treadmill. There's a person there with you who's working out, and size doesn't matter, age doesn't matter. Because if you're breathing, you can get healthy if you're not healthy, or you want to be healthier. And you've got some folks in there. One of the instructors is training for the Olympics. All of them look really, really good, to my husband's chagrin, but that's a whole different topic. But there are men there too. And so who work out. And so, but you're working out on the treadmill, and they work you so long on the treadmill as a group, and then you're working on the water rowers, and then you come from the water rowers, and then you go to the weight room, and they're working you out, showing you how to do it as a group. And it is not timid, which is what I absolutely love. And so it's just a wonderful, and it's called Orange Theory because once you get in the orange, metabolically, your body is still burning calories once you leave the facility for at least 24 to 48 hours. Again, you raise your metabolism, the higher up it goes. Once you get in the orange, it's burning. And it's just wonderful. It's a good mix-up between that and LA boxing and just trying to stay on top of all this stuff. It gets a bit taxing. But body image, no question, very, very important. You like that commercial of Orange Theory? Y'all need to come out March 23rd. But what I don't like about, because, you know, people, you can bring up the cattiness. I can deal with that. You know, when you go into this medium, you better know who you are. Because if you don't, it'll eat you alive. And by that, I mean, you do have your pretty girls and your, you know, and it's great for people to think you're attractive. Don't get me wrong. That's wonderful. But you need to know that before you go in. If you are waiting for someone in the business to tell you that, you're going to be waiting. And they shouldn't really have to. It should be about your craft, how good you are with your craft. It should be, right, but it isn't. We know this. And I've talked to students, and, you know, some of them have raised their hands, and why do you want to be in this? Well, you know, because somebody told me I was pretty. And I listen. I don't crush them. I listen. But what I do say to them is, I ask them, I say, how many ugly women do you know in this business? Now, how many bald-headed men do you know in this business? How many times have you, and again, there's some really good-looking bald-headed men, but what I'm getting at is that image of Willard Scott with that really cute woman sitting next to him. You see that more than anything else. So the pressure's on us, no question. You've got to talk to her. You have to talk to her and show her. It's not what you say, it's what you do. So it's those things. Telling my niece that her neck and her chest are a part of her face. Understanding that you take care of your skin. It is the most important organ on your body. When you start talking about how you appear, even if you are full figured, you can be neat. You look good. Those things are tantamount. It's about how you carry yourself and how you represent yourself. And I think that will carry the day. And yes, you do have individuals who will stand in your way. Plenty of them have. But you either go around them or go over them. You don't stop. You don't stop. And that is what you tell her and keep telling her until she gets it. And she'll get it because you'll show her as well. That's what's important. she wants this. Question? Yes, and then you, yes.
Well, I grew up on radio, and it's still my favorite medium. But hey, TV has its place, and I love it that you are on both, and I love your brilliance and your wit and your candor.
Thank you.
Just as you said about President Obama and Fox, how would you characterize Dennis Kucinich and the Fox offer?
Here's what I'll say about any politician who is going into that realm. Here's the challenge. Unlike, how do I say, you have politicians today, I mean, we say we want the truth and you tell us what we're, and I just had this conversation with Diana DeGette. It is not so much a tough transition as it is one people remember, and they remember even more because of all the social media that we have. It is important, I think, to be constant. It doesn't mean you can't change your mind. I think that if you are a politician and then you're going in front of that camera to become a speaking head or a talking head, then you need to be clear on why you changed your mind, because people will bring up things that will catch you completely off guard. I also think that I could be wrong, but there very well could be strings attached with working in some of those entities, like Fox News or like, you know, some of the others. I was surprised. I don't know about you, but I was surprised when the Dennis Kucinich thing came up. But I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think you just have to tread lightly. One of the other things that it reminds me of, too, is in politics, for those who are in it, especially inside that beltway, there are no good friends or bad friends. It's just politics. They really, I mean, you look at what's happening now, even with Boehner, and you look at what's happening because you can't tell me there's not a fight that's going on that Republican side. You just can't tell me. There is a huge battle that is going on that really hasn't made the news yet. Anytime the president of the United States is going around the speaker and going around the head senator, you know, it's like, okay, there's a huge battle. And so all of those things come to bear on us. They come to bear. And so to become a talking head on TV, I think, and you were a former highfalutin politician, I think you just have to be very careful, especially when you're going to a network as controversial as Fox. You know, again, it's about knowing who you are and what you will and won't do. We'll see. We will see. Yes, you, and then you. Yes.
How do you think the conservative Republican white males that call you up and say, I love your program, how do you think they are reacting to what you are saying and they keep on listening to you?
You know, I assume either they like what I'm saying or it's making sense or they just love punishment. I think it's important to just listen. It's not going to kill us to listen. God, it is, you know, I absolutely may not agree with you. And this is another thing I think is very, very true. You know, I think we've underestimated in this country the power of relationships. And quite frankly, I do believe that President Obama was beaten about the head and shoulders in the first few years. And he's like, I'm done. I'm taking my ball. I'm going home. I'm not playing with you all anymore. The challenge is he needs to come back out and play because he needs them. He can't get anything done without those. He can't. I understand people call him, Gloria, you should just shove it down their throats. I'm like, well, technically you'd be shoving it down our throats too. You know, and that's not how this country is set up. If we want to get it done, there's got to be some consensus and there has to be some compromise. But don't mess with Social Security. And so all of those things come into play when you start talking about, well, they're listening and they'll call up and they'll say, you know, one guy's like, I got my hand close to my button because I didn't think you would. And he was like, I like her, you know, and that part, that's great. That's wonderful. But I would rather be respected than liked. I'm glad that they listen and I'm glad they call me. I think it's important because, I mean, we are all stuck on this big blue marble. So either we got to fix it or as my mama would say, we're going to be ass out. I mean, you got to either fix it or step off, you know, and so I'm big on, I'm glad they're listening. That's a start. So then they'll tell other people, you know, she's not so bad. That's good. I think that's a plus for everybody. And I'm not trying to appease. I'm just being who I am. I'm being who I am. People say, you know, you kind of middle of the road. No, I'm not. Trust me, I got an opinion. I also think sometimes as a talk show host, you don't need to give your opinion right out. You need to set it up. You know, I want to know what y'all think. You know, there would be no Glow show without listeners. I want to know what you think. This is your community just like it's mine. Mine doesn't stop the minute that the radio show goes off. You know, so yeah, that's what I think.
So everything has a life cycle to it, and I'm hearing that Rush Limbaugh's life cycle is coming to an end. But I'm just wondering, I heard that the talk radio, that the 5 corporations that own all of the media in this country are really looking at the hate talk radio and having it leave. Is that true?
Well, here's what I know. I don't know if that's true or not, but here's what I do know. I know that there is power in your fingers and your feet and in your mouth. And the only way, because you had heard that, well, you know, the conservatives, because they support their people, which is true. I mean, Rush didn't get to be Rush by himself. You know, there is a lot to that. And I don't necessarily know that the Glow brand is going to work. All I know is I'm just being who I am. And this opportunity has presented itself. And I am going to walk it like I talk it. I am going to bring it straight to you. If people say, you know, Glow, this is good. And plenty of times one guy called me and said, you're not liberal enough. I'm saying, oh, I'm sorry. What the hell does that mean? You know, but I think it does come down to, we do have a sense of fairness, y'all. I mean, it is about, I don't like what you stand for, so I'm going to run against you. I mean, there's no, how shall I say, coinky dink, you know, that Kaufman is, you know, now having a change of heart. Hey, it's called Andrew Romanoff. That's why he's having a change of heart. You know, all of those things matter. But if you want those corporations, and yes, by the way, Clear Channel has some main capital, and it's my understanding at the higher echelon. So people always, Gloria, do you know that? Yeah, I do. And as long as that check clears and Gloria can say what she needs to say, we're good. You know, we're good until, and people say, well, you know, you didn't cover this on CBS. Why can't you? Well, until it's GLO and not CBS, I can only do so much. But the support matters. There's no question it matters. And so if there is this movement afoot that is looking for that hate radio, because some of the things I hear on radio, I'm like, these people should be locked up. I mean, the hate and the vitriol and the, you know, it's a wonder that we don't have mass shootings all the time. I mean, every day it is a scary time. And that is why being this time in history, it's important to open your mouth and say, that's how I believe, or I don't necessarily agree with President Obama all the time, but he espouses the fundamentals that I think are good, in this country. And that's anybody. You could be a Republican, just so happens there is one right now, but it could be. But you look at Governor Chris Christie. I mean, you can dog him out and all the fat joke. I just hate that when they do it. I absolutely, as a comic, but they have the right to do it. And he is, you know what, as a comic, I'll laugh at it. I think that it does more damage, but I think he has you have to be somewhere middle of the road to carry the state of New Jersey. If you've ever been there, I'm like, what? How did that happen? He's a Republican, so you know there's some middle of the road ground. And he is a very straight shooter, but again, he's a politician, and I see them all through that prism. Doesn't mean they're not good people, but what it does mean is, let me look at your record and let me see where you stood. Let me see where you stand today, where you stood yesterday. So all those things come into play. So if that is afoot, it is up to us to say, okay, that's fine. And people say, well, okay, Gloria, we listen. What else can we do? It's the advertisers. It's when you hear me say, coming out to Orange Theory Fitness, or by the way, Front Range Preventive Imaging with the heart screening and the colon. Apparently they're loving me because y'all are getting your colon sweeped all over the place, which is a wonderful thing. That's good, because no opportunity waits. So I'm glad y'all are doing that, but that's how you do it. That is absolutely how you do it. And I am not an individual who says yes to everything. Salespeople are all over me, and I'm like, yeah, back off. It's like I've sprayed myself down with Pam. You know, you're not sticking, move. You know, you have to be very selective with who it is that you endorse. Certainly, being in news and in TV, there's no one else doing this. So I understand that those are really high stakes. And at the end of the day, my name is all I've got. There's no way I'm jacking it up for an endorsement. It's not happening. So those people, when I'm saying I trust them, and you haven't heard me say that about a Cotman transmission, but I took my car there and they were like, well, I said, okay, how much? Because you're going to talk legalese to how much? And they were like, no, it's not your transmission. And I'm like, so something I was prepared to pay $1,000 cost me $50, when it finally got fixed. But had I taken it to the dealer, well, that's a whole different topic. Anyway, I hope I answered your question. I think there was one over here. Yes.
Well, I really was sort of following that vein, and I'm just so happy to see a balance now with some progressive talk show hosts, because for so long there was nothing. And so I hope this is a trend that continues. The only show I know of is the AM 760 shows, and I don't know of any other station.
No, it is the only one in the state. Now, you do have NPR, who, it's more of a newsy, right? But this is the only local show that is here. And if y'all listen, people who are in Idaho and people in Iowa and folks down in Florida and Ohio listen on iHeartRadio because they have been without. I think when you say, I love this is good, this is valuable to my day and my life, then you listen and you support. That's important. That's how you increase, because if there's one thing I know about any business, let alone Bain Capital, if it's making the money, that's a good thing. And I'm not anti-money, but be clear, this is a business. And so when I'm looking at what's going to impact your lives, and I'm thinking nationally, how does that look locally? How does that look for the state of Colorado? I mean, like tomorrow, talking about the death penalty and Nathan Dunlap. How many of you remember that case, Nathan Dunlap? And the chance for the governor now to give him, pardon him. So where it'll be life in prison without parole. And, he has that opportunity. But do we want that? I remember that case. I remember that. That was horrible, that Chuck E. Cheese. I remember that. And so looking at that, looking at civil unions, huge debate tomorrow that's going to take place. That's going to pass. Oh, it did? Yeah. Right. I think that's good. But then what will happen, because there will be a debate tomorrow when you start talking about what's going to happen as far as the courts. I don't know if you saw even today about the marijuana, where you've got all these people with all this money because they've got these legitimate businesses, because folks passed Amendment 64, but banks can't take that money because that's a federal crime. The feds control the banks. So now you've got, and a lot of these marijuana businesses are women. So women, this one woman had a bag for $100,000. She's just traveling with it, or she doesn't know. She's in her car, at home. Criminals know two things. They know where you live and where you work. So they know that money's somewhere. So it's one or two places, 50-50 chance. And so they're saying we are really hurting right now. We didn't think that far ahead, apparently, when we passed Amendment 64. So I always look at is it impacting us here? How will that impact us here? So, yes. Did I answer your question? I hope so. Yes.
I want to go way back to
Lord.
you said before. Oh, I won't go that far.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I know. How far back we going, Judy?
Only the top drawer story someday. But anyway, the needle of progress, is it moving at a better pace for women in media and women in general? Do you see how that needle is moving, or is it going to take us 70 years to get equal pay?
I don't think it's going to take 70 years, but that equal pay question is a tough one, and here's why. It depends on how you negotiate, or if it's you that's negotiating. Is it your agent? Some people in this business have agents. I didn't have one for a very long time. But I'm still really hands-on, and I'm really, really, really not big on giving anybody my money. If I'm not. I just sometimes agents who see certain opportunities coming down the line, and you think, okay, that's good. The agent sent me out on this story. Case in point, sidebar, Judy. I was at CBS 4, and I get a call from a friend of mine in Chicago saying, hey, Oprah's show is going bye-bye, and WABC, or WLS is really the big station she was looking for, somebody to replace that show in the same studios where she was, blah, blah, blah. And would you be interested? And I said, yeah, absolutely, I'd be interested. And so I have my demo sent over, and I didn't have an agent at the time. And, they call me and say, we want to fly you up. And it happens really quick in this business. It's crazy. And so I fly up, and, you know, you've got the Stephen A. Smiths. For those who like SportsCenter or even watch sport, he's one of the ones, and he is something else. Cut that on the tape. You've got just the who's who. Tony Harris at the time, he was at CNN. You've got Bernie Mac's daughter. You've got a lot of the who's who, people you see on HGTV, all these people who are vying for this job. And they wanted a male-female. And the long short of that is, I get a call back. So you do all these auditions. They have you paired up with these people every 15 minutes. You know, you're on this set, paired up. And you get the feedback from the producers who are there. And long of it short is, I make the cut, get called back up a second time. So I fly back. And the bottom line is they wanted someone who was local. Now here is what I call the honey hush. They are looking for a host, male and female, which is different. They wanted to go in a totally different direction. And what we did not know was they had a focus group watching us behind glass that we couldn't see through. And so they were allowing, or getting the feedback from the focus group, what do you like this? What do you... And the thing that, from what they told me, killed me was, loved me, but I reminded them too much of Oprah. And I'm like, no, I'm trying to be my best glow. I'm not trying to be Oprah. That's been done, and she is phenomenal. I'm just trying to be my best. But what the president of the general manager of WLS came down and she said, we can't take that chance. Because Chicago is brutal. She said when Oprah first came, they were fat this, blah, blah, that. I mean, just horrible, dark, I mean, just horrible. For those of you who've never been to Chicago, it could be a very racist city. People think, oh my God, Chicago is trust me, it can be a very racist city. Much more than people think. I would rival even to say that this place is a lot less racist than Chicago when it comes to those. I mean, there are factions. I've even talked to people who are there now who did get the gig, and they said, you know, there's certain parts of towns that, got a friend of mine who's a white guy, he's dating a black girl, he says, we don't go there. You just don't go there. And he said, that's Chicago. As long as you know it, that's Chicago. And I said, well, then there's good and bad everywhere. To your point, I think when you look at whether it's an agent, bless you, I've even got one for you, an agent, or you're doing the negotiating yourself when it comes to moving the needle ahead, moving us ahead, it is very dependent upon what you bring to the table and how you value it, and quite frankly, how you leverage it. It's very important you know what you bring to the table, i.e. lean in. Don't think, well, you know, I got this, but that really doesn't matter. Everything that you're doing, whether you're working, matter of fact, if you were at home, you're working, you just don't know it, not in that sense. Those things can be leveraged. I mean, I think y'all know that, but even in my business, those things can be leveraged. So you've got to be able to ask for something that I didn't necessarily think I would get. Just ask for it, because what's the answer? Either yes or no. And if it's no, why is it no? Why is it no? So, yeah.
Two quick things. One, thank you for being civil to people who call that you don't agree with, because I think that really helps further our reputation as progressives, that we're decent, rational people. And that's going to, you know, you catch more flies with honey. Right. What does it say? Yeah,
you catch more flies with sugar than you can with shinola.
So thank you for that. And
You're welcome.
What I want to tell you is your producer wanted us to remind you when it gets close to time to go, and
it is.
Yeah. So,
I know.
As much as we'd like you to.
For those of you, how many people here met my producer? Did y'all meet my producer? Okay, so you know that's my husband. Okay, so here's how that happened, really quick. So he was the executive producer for Dave Logan and Scott Hastings, and had been for years. And we had worked, and no, I didn't meet him at the station. Matter of fact, when I told you the story about when I went down to Houston and people had, you know, a few influential people had asked me, you know, do you want to go down? He was the #1 guy, and I didn't know him that well. At the time I was going through divorce, but he said to me, he said, I understand you don't like Houston. I said, no, because they have gnats and really big bugs and roaches, and I'm not used to that. And I'm not joking, I did say that. And he says, you should go to Houston because that's a top 10 market. He said, you were just coming out of college at the time. And he said, you should go because it looks very good on your resume to be in a market that size. Houston's immense, it's huge. And so I went, and it wasn't until a year later that I was still getting newsletters from a journalistic organization, the Colorado Association of Black Journalists, and I saw that he had won Journalist of the Year. And so a year later, I call him in the newsroom, and he picks up the phone, and immediately he knew who it was. And so from that point, he said, well, how are you liking it? I said, you know, I don't, but it's good, and I'm glad you told me, and congratulations. And he said, well, okay, so, you know, I might come down there and visit you. And I was like, wow, that's a nibble. So I said, really, you'd come down? Because, you know, I was divorced at that time, going to the movie and enjoying myself, all by myself. And so those are the times when you really start to know, when you really start to enjoy your own company. I'm like, I like this stuff. And he said, yeah, I'll come down and visit you. And 2 weeks later, he came down, and we were visiting back and forth and for about a year. And then I'm like, okay, this is expensive. And so it evolved. And if you'd have said to me now that I'm working with my husband, I'd been like, you are seriously on crack. There's no way I'm working with that man. But it's worked out really good to be able to separate and differentiate the two, saying, okay, he's not honey at work. You know, if there's something that happens that Gloria has learned, that she must table it. I know that sounds like a therapist, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. You table it, and, you know, we talk about it at home, so it works. And yes, so he is my EP. When they asked me who I needed, I said, well, if I'm going to do TV still, I need somebody who gets it done while I'm doing TV. I cannot come home and create everything. And they said, well, describe him to me, or describe her. And so I described him, and they had already talked to him. I didn't know that. I told them, don't ever do that again, but that's a whole different topic. And the next thing you know, they said, the general manager called me. He said, well, you know, you're describing Amani. And I said, Amani who? And they said, your husband. I said, well, he's the producer for Dave Logan and, you know, Dave Krieger. I said, I can't. Well, you know what? There are going to be some changes. And so it worked out, and it's working out. So everything is done. And I have my materials that typically are there. And so far, so good. So keep your fingers crossed for us. So thank y'all.
Thank y'all.